Now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikwoku, this morning. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda. You and Benga, did you watch the match yesterday?
I was too nerved out to watch the match, so I waited for the highlights this morning.
It was a
You
huge
told me
hit.
you were going to watch it. You said it
It
yesterday.
Benga.
Really hit me bad, I must confess. And,
oh my
waking up this morning, it was something very painful indeed.
Oh my goodness.
But the Super Eagles did their best there. I'm proud of them.
Okay.
At least not conceding a goal all through the entire fixture, only losing to penalties,
yes.
It's always a gamble.
Oh my goodness, bucket of tears.
Absolutely.
And all this money is promised to them.
Oh yes. So many people have lost bets because a lot of money was wagered on the Super Eagles actually winning. And so it's very unfortunate to see that the mood is pretty low this morning, as many are still just in tears from what happened last night.
Still some compensation ahead because we still have that third place fixture to be with one of the countries.
They went far. Anyway, let's look at the papers this morning. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll be kicking off with This Day newspaper. In This Day, the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, is not mincing words this morning, warning Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and other terrorist bandit sympathizers to take a step back, saying that a friend of a thief is a thief. He went on to state that terrorism or banditry do not represent regional, ethnic, or religious brotherhood. In the education sector, federal government and ASU reach a historic agreement on conditions of service. And NUPRC and prospective bidders are meeting over sale of 50 oil blocks. Moving on to Leadership newspaper, which has gone with the passing of media icon and co-founder of Newswatch, Yakubu Mohammed, at 75, as tributes are pouring in. On the political front, Kwankwaso sets fresh conditions for possible return to APC. Daily Independent writes about failure in the power sector even after decades of expenditure. An African Democratic Congress slams the government for spending over $9 million for lobbying in the U.S. amid hardship in Nigeria. Recall that the government is reported to have contracted a Washington firm to communicate its efforts to protect Christian communities, countering international criticism and maintaining diplomatic support. New Telegraph here, the United States has paused immigrant visa processing for 75 countries, including Nigeria. And in Rivers, 2 more legislators withdraw support from a move to impeach the governor. Vanguard newspaper goes back into history, reporting on Major General Harina's take on Nzogu's coup, explaining why it was inevitable. Plus, the sad story, AFCON Super Eagles has crashed out on penalties against Morocco. Bucket of tears right there. Daily Sun reads about the 2027 election with Kuka, Dogara, Musa tipped as possible VP candidates to President Tinubu. And on one of the victims of the Owo Church massacre narrates in court how she lost 2 legs and 1 eye in that incident. The Guardian shines light on the absence of ambassadors abroad, and particularly in Washington, D.C., which has exposed the federal government to a hefty $9 million lobbying fee to get its voice heard in the U.S. Moving on to the international headlines, Daily Graphic, where Ghana unveils its 2027 strategy, overhauling VAT and attempting to reset the economy. Daily Mirror, we have global tensions escalating, with Britain and the U.S. raising military readiness as unrest grows internationally. Both countries have activated contingency plans ready for Iran strikes and retaliation, as well as problems from Russia. In the Times, U.S. President Donald Trump says he has it on good authority that killings and executions have stopped in Iran. Question is the military strike on pause? Shameless reads Daily Mail headline in regard to West Midlands police chief who refuses to quit despite losing the confidence of the Home Secretary over a controversial decision to ban Israeli football fans. newspaper this morning, UK is withdrawing some personnel from a Qatar base as the U.S. considers possible military action against Iran, with allies preparing for potential reprisals. Daily Telegraph reads about local elections controversy, why ministers may allow 27 councils to skip local elections in May. This potentially leaves about 4 million people without vote this year, and it has become really, really controversial. The Guardian newspaper, the Danish say President Trump still wants Greenland even after talks, prompting criticism from Copenhagen. Financial Times report on snap elections in Japan, and U.S. evacuating its military base in Qatar as Iran tensions put Middle East on edge. Now, let's break down what these stories mean for everyday people. Let's return to this day newspaper. The Minister of Defense, General Musa, says, a friend of a thief is a thief. He is simply reinforcing that indirect support, including sympathy, silence, or logistical aid, enables terrorism. What he is trying to do here is to delegitimize backers who may not take up arms themselves against terrorists or bandits, but create safe spaces, funding channels, or community support that sustains violent groups. And he mentioned Sheikh Gumi, which is a big one, isn't it?
Indeed. When you look at it, it resonates the reality that 80% of the solution approach to ending insecurity in the country is still largely non-kinetic. So we need to expand our scope, we need to expand the views and look at those that are in sympathy with this element, with this bandit or terrorist element. And Sheikh Gumi has always called for that soft stance for bandits, either calling for negotiation or de-radicalizing or exchanging or of bandit prisoners with hostages and all that. So I think that's because there's no way you can pay, you would have to pay ransom if you are negotiating with these people, because they are from that extremely radical ideological group. And when you release this kind of money, they simply go back to recoup and re-strategize, and it's like a reboost to them. And so you can't be, indeed, I really, but I think it's not enough for us to be uttering such statement. We should be taking concrete actions to send clear signals to these sympathizers of bandits and terrorist elements by taking proactive steps like the state policing initiative. And we also saw that in the president declaring of the state of emergency on security, he called for massive recruitment into the Nigerian army and also other security forces. We are yet to be updated on how this has been done, but my suspicion is based on fact. Was this provided under the 2025 budgetary arrangement? So when you look at this, how you question the sincerity of government in all this?
Well, one of the reasons why mentioning Sheikh Gumi is a big deal, or seems to be a big deal, Indeed. Is that for over the years there has been silence in regard to the kind of very controversial statements that he has made. In fact, it seemed that at the federal level as well as the state level, the governments were working hand in hand with him in terms of him going into the bush, taking photos with bandits and terrorists and calling them our own, they are brothers and sisters, they are our sons. We have to do more in order to reintegrate them into the society. And so at this particular time, with General Musa coming on board as the Minister of Defense, there seems to be a shift, a radical shift in the approach to terrorism. And now he is saying that if you sympathize with these people, you are no longer going to be treated as someone who sees Nigeria as a place where we cannot continue to do business as usual. The point then will be, after calling him out verbally, what will happen in terms of, is he going to be held responsible for what he has said? Will there be an investigation to see where he has done wrong? And we know that he's currently not in the country. Before the U.S., yes. Some people say he ran away from the country because he thought that he would be a target. Whatever it is, after this statement from General Musa, what will be the next steps to ensure that sympathizers, including those that are funneling funds to terrorists and bandits, are held responsible for what they do within the country?
Well, Dr. Constance and Benga, you've both mentioned some very great and pivotal points about this. But you know, some critics may argue that where does free speech come into play? Because yes, a lot of the things that he said are very inciting. Don't get me wrong, I'm playing the devil's advocate with this. I'm not taking any sides at all, but I'm just trying to look at this situation critically. What happens when people start to say, so now you cannot speak up against what you want in terms of your opinion? You know, Sheikh Gumi has said so many controversial things, and so many of them are now coming to light in a way that is grabbing the attention of most people. Before, as you rightly said, nothing was being done. It was just being pushed under the covers. You know, people were just muttering maybe in silence, but now these kind of conversations are coming to light. But what happens when critics now say that there should be freedom of speech, people should be able to say how they feel? What do you say to that?
I think in responding to that, I would want to establish that fact that has been established internationally, that Nigeria faces an existential threat. And when you look at this, we also look at not just the verbal sympathizers.
Right.
The negotiations, these transactions passed through some institutions. Even the banks also should be held accountable.
Absolutely.
So I think if it has been established that this issue of terrorism, banditry is a threat to Nigeria's survival, is a threat to Nigeria's interest, then there can't be any sympathizers. Even look at what U.S. is doing. U.S. is saying that anyone trading with Venezuela, or was it or with Iran,
it was with both.
That they're going to place sanctions
on them. Yes.
On them. So Nigeria too should begin to take proactive steps that would really show that they are ready to match words with action.
Absolutely.
What does, I mean, free speech?
Where do you draw the line?
What is free speech? When rhetorics undermine national security and promote instability within the country, how is that free speech? You know, everybody has a responsibility as a citizen of a country to ensure that their activities does not lead to the pulling down of the nation. I think that's essentially
I think if free speech is that free, there wouldn't be any case of libel.
That's right. All right, let's go to the next story. Staying with this day newspaper, federal government and ASU sign new agreement, 40% pay rise with other perks. After weeks of negotiations, the lecturers will now retire at 70 and earn an additional 1.8 million naira yearly as allowance. You might say that in this economy, 40% pay rise may not mean much.
Yes.
You know, however, this agreement is expected to end endless industrial disputes, and Nigerian education sector, we know, needs some kind of stability in the academic calendar because it's been very disruptive for students. Do you think this will put an end to disputes, or is this just the first step towards solving a long-term problem that has bedeviled this sector?
This looks like it's just going to be a stopgap measure. I'm pretty sure that things are going to continually come up. You know, part of what you asked was very instructive and an interesting point that you made when you mentioned that, is this enough money? You know, it's a 40% upwards review of the remuneration that they're currently getting. And they also said that there were many other benefits. There were enhanced pension benefits for professors and many other stipulations. Now, what we know is that this renegotiation has been going on for a very long time. So I think what most people are feeling is a sigh of relief just for the break now, just to kind of get some sort of stability in that regard, you know, while negotiations continue to go on, because I don't believe that this is the last of it. Also, the Education Minister, Dr. Tunji Alausa, described this as a historic turning point that restores trust and confidence in the nation's university system. And just as you rightly said as well, stability is exactly what is needed right now. So it's a plus for now. Will it last? We do not know.
Okay, I think that talking about stopgap, yes, this is a very significant milestone in ending this renegotiation stalemate that has spanned 16 years now.
Yes.
We've seen the perks given to the lecturers and all that. But more fundamentally, I think we need to look at it from a broader perspective. We've had several declarations, the Johannesburg Declaration, the Maputo Declaration, the London Declaration between the former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and one other president of the country. We've had a decade of action on education in which had only gone through the pipeline of expectations, and that has not been reenacted, because we need to look at the broader fiscal scope of sustaining not just the interest, not just the salaries. We need to look at the broader scope of sustainability of Nigeria's public university system.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you look at the global university ranking, Nigeria is likely to be like in 100 and something position, very distant expectation. But talking about the stopgap, let me quickly address that. There are still some university lecturers that were suspended that have not been called back from university, the Lagos, Kogi, and Owerri. So many of those issues, because of our time, we will, but indeed, there are stopgaps.
I mean, just very quickly, the other aspect that nobody talks about is research. Whether this will be able to improve research in our universities, because what you find is that in countries, especially developing countries, when you have institutions, you need institutions that are able to provide solutions for the realities within the country, instead of being import dependent on ideas from abroad. And so if you're not doing that as a nation in your institutions, and you're not producing graduates that are able to solve the problem, then it's all a waste of money. So let's see how this impacts research in the educational institutions. Vanguard newspaper this morning, today is Armed Forces Remembrance Day. You must have noticed that the roads are already blocked, you know, in commemoration. Yes. So it's a day to talk about honor and sacrifice of Nigerian soldiers, a moment that is used to honor all that they've done or all that they do for the country. It's also the day of the first military coup in Nigeria. And hence that Vanguard headline, if we can pull up Vanguard newspaper, it says 60 years after, why Nzogu's coup was inevitable, according to Major General Haruna. He noted that the realities of that era made the coup unavoidable. He talked about 3 regions that emerged at independence, about imbalance, about dispute over size, population, revenue sharing, which brought about power struggle and conflict. So these issues made the economic and political relationship among the regions heated. Consequently, political unity did not exist, he explained. It's a long read. If you pick up the paper, you can see what he says. But all we know is that that coup defined the trajectory of Nigeria for so many years. Fast forward to today, 2026. Can we look around today at the country and say that the unity that we fought for over the years has succeeded? Are we moving in the direction that we need with a common vision as a country?
Yeah, I think Major Chukwuemeka or Kaduna Nzegu's coup is a reference point in Nigeria's history, because immediately after the first, during the First Republic, the leaders did not meet up to the expectations of Nigerians, and the kind of enthusiasm that greeted Nigeria's independence, that was not what was being executed. Corruption stunk to the high heavens. There were a lot of political tensions, and also, especially in the western region, where there were disputes over the outcome of elections. And this young group of military officers came out to say that no, we cannot continue in this way. These were certainly not the dream of our founding fathers. We need to change things. So those radical young group of military people came out, but albeit there were a lot of misinterpretation, because some people will say it was only Unegbe that was killed in that coup, and many other people, especially in the north. So there were this suspicion, and in order to address this was the Aburi Accord that also gave rise to another misinterpretation. I remember someone like late Chief Obafemi Olo saying that in events that East should go with the North, that the East should secede, that West would also secede. So it was misinterpreted that he was saying that West will secede. But
you also
meanwhile,
remember
for the
that
conditional.
But you also remember that the coup leaders. You also remember that the coup leaders. You also remember that the coup leaders said one of the reasons they did the coup was to bring him out of prison and make him, the president of Nigeria. So there's a lot that has gone on.
A lot of narratives, but I think that what is happening now is kind of resonates those kind of symbolic events that have marked the nation's history in a very symbolic way. So I think the essence now, as we mark the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, is to remember what the dreams, go back to the dreams of our founding fathers, address the issues these people raised, because corruption was at the front burner. And none of these people, whether dead or alive, could deny the fact that corruption at that point stunk to the high heavens.
Right,
and there
but
was
is that not the
to
same
correct
case
it.
at this point
That's
in
the
time?
same case.
So the thing is that it's a sober reminder of the dangers of military intervention. Although Major General Harun has said it was inevitable given the conditions and the realities of that time, what was going on. But we have gone through more than 20 years of military rule in Nigeria, which was completely devastating to the country. We saw a concentration of power at the center. We saw the normalization of abuse of power, normalization of corruption. We saw poor planning being entrenched.
Indeed.
We saw looting of public resources, eroding of respect for due process. All of these have crippled Nigeria, and so we are still living with the vestiges of military rule. When you look at our democracy today and how our leaders act, most of it is like they are military leaders. And in a way and in a sense, Nigerians sometimes feel like, yes, we want someone that is very strong, someone that is like a military leader. I think psychologically we still have that within us. And so the democracy that we are practicing, the unity that we say we have today, have we achieved that unity that we want? In terms of negotiation, we have to talk about negotiating a country. You have to negotiate a country. When Nigerians say our unity is non-negotiable, does it mean that we don't have the terms upon which and the values upon which a nation is built? These are discussions that we swept under the carpet and that we might have to revisit. Indeed,
when we say that that our unity is non-negotiable, that does not preclude the need to renegotiate our terms of existence. And that is why I think the advocates of the constitutional review are trying to address many of these landmines in our constitution, because you know that we are still driving with the 1999 constitution that were just a product of emergency and some military people coming together. We still see that vestiges in the reality of our political life.
All right, New Telegraph, very briefly. We have Trump freezes visa processing for Nigerians, 74 other nationals, effective January 1 this year. Officials argue that the pause will help prevent entry of individuals who may rely on public assistance, though critics see this as a sweeping immigration restriction that could significantly affect people seeking permanent residency and family-based migration to the U.S. U.S. embassies have been instructed to review visa applications until screening and vetting procedures are reassessed. Other countries affected include Iran, Brazil, Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, Egypt, among others. And so here we are with, it aligns with the general immigration crackdown of the Trump administration, doesn't it?
Yes, and I think that there's a lot of noise going on about this immigration visa proceedings at the moment, but it's very important that people don't assume the worst immediately without having proper understanding of what this measure actually is. The instruction was actually for 75 countries to pause visa processing, and we understand that, it's highly frustrating to be in this type of process. Imagine if you have your visa being processed right now at the moment, and then everything is paused indefinitely without a date being given of when the changes will be, put to rest. But what we must remember is that the visas that are impacted are family-based green cards and employment-based green cards, as well as fiancé visa petitions. It's not impacting stuff like student visas, tourist visas, or work visas yet. We don't know if that will change in the future, but it's important that while this is going on, as much as it seems a little bit unfair, it's also understandable. Right now, the U.S. is going through so much internal turmoil when it comes to their, immigration issues. We were talking about ICE the other day and the fire that they're coming under from several nations and even internally in the U.S. because of purely what's going on there. They're literally going door to door and, for lack of a better word, hunting down immigrants. So I think it's pretty much in order. It's in their best interest for the U.S. to make this move and know that this pause is essentially aimed at foreigners who are seeking to live in the U.S. and not people who are, traveling as tourists. I think an interesting thing to note about this as well is how this will affect the World Cup, because already this is bringing some negative reactions from people. People are discouraged from wanting to go to the U.S. to watch some of these football tournaments that are coming up with the World Cup. So that's a good thing to look into at the moment as well.
All right, for the international scene, we have Uganda is holding general elections today. 81-year-old Museveni, who has been in power since 1986, is on the ballot for a 7th term. A long-time opposition leader and pop star turned politician Bobi Wine is also running. The internet has been shut down to prevent what the authorities say is misinformation, disinformation, electoral fraud, and related risks. Benga, a lot has been said about Yoweri Museveni, but 60% young population in that country. Bobi Wine is the most popular opposition leader. But you have to think, if Bobi Wine is given a chance today, do you think he has what it takes to take over that country with all the complexities of one man running that country for at least 40 years?
Yeah, I know you're looking at him from the perspective of being a musician.
But, yes, and then he hasn't run any large institution, no public administration experience.
This is democracy we are talking about, and when you're talking about democracy, we talk about inclusivity.
Yes.
So you cannot just limit someone based on his choice. We have some geniuses amidst this crop of musicians and that can't really fit into leadership role. But when you look into the inside reality of Uganda, you look at an 81-year-old leader going for, I think, the 7th consecutive time, and also trying to create a structure for his son to ascend his
family is already serving in the cabinet anyway. Status.
So when you look at all that, and also the shutdown of the internet and the militarization of the civic space is really very disturbing for a country that claims to aspire to have a credible democratic system. I think that there is a need for a peer review mechanism that should look into many of this electoral and political transition so that Africa can boast of a truly inclusive, resilient and representative government.
I truly want to stand with Benga on this one in being positive. Don't judge a book by its cover. Yes, Bobi Wine might be a musician, a pop musician at that, but we shouldn't judge, his patriotism by what he does for a living. I mean, Thomas Jefferson as well wrote the Declaration of Independence by the age of 33. Some actually say it started at the age of 27. So I don't think that age or what you do for a living should be used as a benchmark. Absolutely, it's a big position. There are big shoes to fill into. But right now, Uganda is a country that has been troubled for a very long time. Yoweri Museveni has been in power for 4 decades. And so people have been calling for this regime change. So maybe Bobi Wine is the change that is needed. You see these internet shutdowns. They've blocked social media. They've said nobody's allowed to buy any new SIM cards or register them. These are things that shouldn't be happening during an election that is fair. If all these things are credible, why the need to put such a halt? Yes, they've come out and said that these moves are in line with national security and public safety, but are they really when you look at the bigger scope of things?
All right. Well, let's see whether his record, it's not about age. He has limited experience, his public administration, no record of managing any large institutions. There is a push for generational change, which is why he is that face. Let's see whether his movement can translate the protest of energy or energy of protest into coherent policy, economic management, and national security strategy. We'll see how the elections turn out. Many people think that it will be a predetermined outcome as usual. Yoweri Museveni will win, but Ugandans will see whether they are able to fight against that administration. Those were your headlines today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Constance Ikoku.